Hey everybody, my name is Jared. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, you should know that I am not an economist, I am not a sociologist. I am just a guy who loves Mexico, loves Mexican culture and Mexican language. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what COVID has looked like here in Mexico, but more about why I think Mexico is one of the most incredible countries on the planet. So the pandemic in Mexico has looked like the pandemic in most other countries. Stay-at-home orders, shelter in place, all that sort of thing. But it's been a bit of a mixed bag in how people react to that stay-at-home order. On the one hand, you have people like teachers who know that some of their students don't have access to internet or even cell phones or any kind of data plan to be able to send in their homework or do the online class, so they go and get their cubrebocas, their masks, and actually go to the students' homes and give the students classes outside their home, which I think is beautiful. And then you have other people who, just because of the sheer need that they have, are willing to risk putting up their stand because that's their only way that they're going to be able to put food on the table. They're willing to risk being fined, willing to risk even getting sick, because the business just needs to go on. The big multinational corporations have been able to stay open. We're talking Costco and Walmart. They exist here in Mexico and they haven't really had much of a problem. But then you've got like the mid-level chain stores, but Mexico level, that aren't grocery stores, and they've had a really hard time making ends meet because they have to still keep on paying nomina, they have to keep on paying their employees' salary and taxes to the government and all that stuff. But they haven't had any of the income that they would normally have. And with some places reopening, the places that have been hit the hardest have been small businesses in public spaces, like public markets or strip malls or little rented spaces. Kind of a random fact. The biggest labor force in all of Mexico is the labor force that builds up what are called changarros. Now, changarros are small businesses, micro businesses. It's any business with 1 to 5 employees. A changarro is what somebody does to make ends meet and maybe pay a few other employees in their little business. One of the incredible things about Mexico is that there is a lot less red tape than there is in the United States, for example. So if you want to start a small business, you might need maybe 1 permit to be able to sell on a certain part of the street, and you can get one of these foam coolers, fill it up with homemade burritos, sell them on the side of the street, and potentially even send your kid to college on the income from that. So when you see these guys on the side of the road with their shade structure and a cooler full of burritos, that is an example of a changarro. I think a lot of people in the US are kind of put off by the lack of health inspections and that sort of thing, but the fact is these changarros produce some really amazing products. And with less red tape, the insane pressure and that sense of impending doom that a lot of business owners feel in the United States doesn't exist as much in Mexico. I've talked to a few people about this. I cannot imagine beginning a business in the United States. Nothing but respect for people who do it, but all of the paperwork, all of the red tape, all of the permits that you would need to start even just a tiny little business just seems so overwhelming to me. And I think that when a person is that invested, that I think, like, to begin, you have to go into so much debt that it just makes it impossible to not succeed, and I cannot imagine that pressure. But when a changarro goes under here, it's like the person is already ready to go on to the next thing. It doesn't devastate them. They are able to keep going. They're more resilient. So for example, during COVID, a lot of these businesses had to close their doors. But those people aren't just folding their hands and waiting until the pandemic is over. They're already planning their next business venture. But some of them, instead of closing their doors permanently, just shifted to the way that they do business. A place that sells fruit was no longer able to have people on the physical grounds where they sell fruit, so they right away started delivering fruit to people's houses. A shoe boutique couldn't have people buying shoes there anymore, so they started sending shoes to the people. Tortas Don Beto is on Uber Eats. Now, Tortas Don Beto is just a cart with a stove on the side of the street, and they're delivering on Uber Eats. You have to understand that this is something that's completely normal in the States. Home delivery was always a thing there. But this is a place that does not have a mail system really well developed. These are things that are just getting started. And even Uber Flash, I don't know if that's a thing in the States, but Uber Flash, which is something that my wife was doing before Uber Flash made it official, basically you send a package in an Uber to somebody else instead of sending it in the mail. Uber Flash became a thing. People adapt. All of these businesses almost instantly knew what to do, to change their business slightly and to keep it going. And this is why I think Mexico as a whole is pretty much invincible. It's so resilient, they're so adaptable, and they're so willing to help each other out. Another example, restaurant suppliers that now don't have restaurants to supply started doing boxes of produce for home delivery, and there is an army of out-of-work taxi drivers ready to get that product to the people's houses. People who have changarros know how to adapt, and even when their business fails, their next idea is already in the works. Plus, so many people here have changarros as just side hustles. My wife and I have a friend who works in administration who was laid off. And as soon as she was laid off, she was delivering fruit and she started making jams and jellies and trying all kinds of different things, getting ready for her next side hustle. We have another friend who worked in accounting who has always been good at baking. And while she was in home office, she started baking more and more and more, and now has so many orders that she can't keep up with the demand. That is her side hustle, it's her changarro. And in that way, this pandemic has actually been good for a lot of Mexico. I know it sounds weird to say, but hear me out. It's given a lot of people time to work on their pininos. Now, what are pininos? Pininos are trial runs. They're first batches. It's the photographer taking those first few photos in his new home studio, getting used to the flash. Those first photos are his pininos. It's the test run. Testing out tomato-flavored and wine-flavored jellies. Those jellies are pininos. When I hopped on the sourdough bandwagon, those first few loaves of sourdough, testing out the waters, trying and seeing what works, those are the pininos. Sending your friends chocolate tarts and pavlova cupcakes to see what they taste like and get feedback, those pastries are the pininos for the new bakery business. All this time at home has given so many people time to work on their products, to refine, to dream, to plan ahead. Now, don't get me wrong. COVID has been devastating in Mexico, but there's a whole country of people who have been polishing their pininos and are dreaming for their next changarro, and they are ready to bounce back. Mexico is going to come out from COVID tastier and stronger than it ever has been before. Thank you so much for watching, and if you are an economist or a sociologist, I would love to hear your feedback if you have any actual information. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.